Welcome back to Closing Bell South Africa. Well, CNBC Africa's Svetlana Doneva caught up with Allan Reid. He's the head of mining at Cliffe Dekker Hofmeyr at the mining Indaba. She asked him his thoughts on the 10th anniversary of the mining charter and how a planned review of the charter will affect South African miners.
I think it's difficult to have a look at the mining charter in on its own. I think one has to have a look at the amendments to the Mineral and Petroleum Resource Development Act, the regulations that will be playing an increasingly big part, and I think the mining charter is going to feed into that. And hopefully we're going to see a mining charter which will incorporate the codes of good conduct to a point, as well as the housing standards, because those three pieces of legislation currently, or policy documentation currently, don't really speak to one another on all fours. I think you're going to see more accuracy in the scorecard matched with the mining charter to tie up the loose ends that are currently in the mining charter.
Now, do you think that the mining companies are well poised, willing to execute these changes?
There are mining companies, as you know, which probably participate in a group called Midget. So there is a body at the moment which feeds industry information and government information into one central point. And we're hoping that interaction will result in a cooperative approach in the mining charter.
Okay, great. Susan Shabangu also touched on the strike action, which is starting to rear its head again as we go into wage bargaining season. I think her words were that there is no reason for the country to be complacent of strike action. What is your take on that? How do you interpret it?
I don't think the industry is complacent about strike action. They take it very, very seriously. It impacts severely on the economics of any mining operation. And it's unfortunately one of the areas of concern, and certainly one of the uncertainties which investors are going to be looking at in the future. So I don't agree that there is any complacency. It's certainly something that needs to be addressed now, and it needs to be addressed in a manner which is sustainable. We're getting to a situation where we don't have a strike season as such. It's an ongoing battle between the labour and the employer.
Let's say we're standing here at the same place, mining Indaba 2015. How do you think that the labour situation in South Africa would have changed from where we stand now? Do you see any improvement, realistically speaking?
Yes, I do. I think we're going to go back to a situation where we'll have 2, maybe 3 wage agreements, and I think that would go a long way in letting labour know where they stand and letting investors know where they stand, as well as the employers.
I want to ask you one last question on the labour situation, specifically when it comes to the platinum sector. One of the statistics going around is that almost half of platinum shafts in South Africa are either marginally loss-making or loss-making. Now, in the next couple of years, this is going to have severe implications on the amount of jobs in that sector. And that in itself is also going to impact strikes and labour relations with miners. How do you see that situation evolving?
It's a difficult situation to predict because of the fact that it's highly dependent on commodity prices. Platinum particularly is not suited to mechanical mining, so it does require a very large labour force. And for so long as the cost of extracting and disposing of the metal is sufficient to cover those costs, we're going to be employers of vast numbers of miners. So I think it very much depends really on the commodity prices going forward.
Okay, and your projection on commodity prices, platinum in specific?
I think we're going to see a fairly steady current rate until probably about mid-year, rising slightly towards the end of the year and improving in 2015.
Thank you, Allan. My final question is your expectations from this Indaba. What do you hope to see come out of it for South Africa and also for the continent?
I think it's probably unfortunate timing for this Indaba. We have the labour uncertainty that we've talked about. We've got the economic uncertainty and the resource uncertainty, and we also have regulatory uncertainty, all at the same time. So it's perhaps a pity that the focus of the world is focused on South African mining at this stage in time. But I think my perceptions, and certainly what I've seen and what I've heard, is that there are still a lot of business people here, and they're talking a lot of business. And that's what we like about the mining Indaba. It gives us that opportunity to meet with people that would normally take us 3 months to put together. We can meet them in 3 days.
And unfortunately, it seems to be the second Indaba in a row where labour relations have taken over the main stage as opposed to investment, because last year we were still reeling from Marikana.
Yes, it is. But I think there's a growing realization that government is taking the strike actions seriously. You saw a very early intervention in the platinum strikes now, through the CCMA, through government intervention, and I think investors are gaining confidence from that.